everyone. I'm super happy to be joining y'all again for Open Source Friday. If it's your first time here, Open Source Friday is a Twitch stream where we chat with open source maintainers or core contributors about their projects. Really love this because it gives us the opportunity to get exposed to new open source projects that we can possibly contribute to, or also learn a little bit about maintaining projects on our own. I see some familiar faces here. So hello, just want to say hi to people in the chat. Thanks for tuning in so quickly. Love to see that people are waiting from Costa Rica and stuff like that. Without further ado, instead of me just continuing to talk, I do want to introduce the guests we have, or have them introduce themselves. So I'm gonna start with from the directions that I see, Blair, then Matthew, then Maria. So Blair, why don't you tell us who you are and what you're about?
Sure. My name is Blair Rampling. I'm the product lead for Botkube. I've been a product manager for a long time. I have experience in a lot of open source. I worked in Red Hat OpenShift for a long time on Prometheus and Thanos and projects like that. That was fell under the team that I was working with. And I worked for small startups, including Botkube, which is a very small team of about 6 or 7 people.
Nice. Perfect. Love the career path. What about Matthew?
Hi everyone. My name is Matthew. Actually, in Polish, it's Mateusz. I'm from Poland, and I'm really excited to be here as a Botkube maintainer. It's a project I've been working on for almost a year now. Previously, I was working on other open source project, mostly focused on the Kubernetes ecosystem. So it's really awesome to be here and showing you our new product.
Awesome. Great. I hope I didn't distract you with my comment just now. What about you, Maria?
Hi, everybody. My name is Maria Ashby. I am Botkube's developer advocate and the newest member to the Botkube team, and honestly, the newest member to Earth in this chat. And I've had previous experience working as a developer advocate for a continuous deployment startup, and I love the Kubernetes ecosystem, and I love Botkube because it promotes accessibility in the Kubernetes space.
Nice. Love it. Thank you so much for introducing yourselves. So I heard y'all mention Botkube a couple of times. What is it? Let us who I don't know who's the person to talk about. Blair? It looks like Blair.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So Botkube is a management and monitoring tool for Kubernetes that integrates with your chat platform. So your chat platform can be Slack, Mattermost, Discord, Microsoft Teams. And so what we do is, on one side, we have monitoring. So we can take events and alerts in from things like Kubernetes itself, from Prometheus Alert Manager, and display them in your chat channels. And we have all kinds of intelligent routing and filtering and stuff to do that. But on the other side, what really makes it different is we can take and run commands from those same channels. So if you have an alert that comes in, it says, hey, your pod is having this problem, you write in that same channel where the alert came in, you can run kubectl get pod or describe pod and find out what's going on, or get the logs for that pod. And so being able to take the monitoring setup, which is really easy with Botkube, it's like a 5-minute install, and also be able to act on those alerts is what really makes Botkube useful. And then what we've done to really extend on that is we can automate those actions. So we can make it so every time an event comes in that says, maybe you have an image pull back off error, we can automatically pull the logs, automatically describe what's going on and get that information. So as soon as you sit down to see that alert, you have all the information. You don't even have to go run that stuff manually. The other piece is that we've made Botkube so it's extensible. And so there is a plugin system with Botkube. So on the source side, we have sources for Kubernetes and Prometheus right now. And on the executor side, we can run kubectl commands and Helm commands. But the plugin system is super easy to use. It's like basically a single API on the source side and pretty simple to set up on the other side. So you can build these plugins for almost any tooling you have in the CNCF ecosystem or outside of it. So really, that's the power of it. Is it's kind of like an API gateway that takes alerts and transforms into actions and can tie all of your tooling together.
That's really amazing. Thank you for that description, because what I was imagining when I checked out the site is that it was just bringing alerts to Slack, and I was like, that's awesome. But I didn't realize that you can send commands back to or even automate them. We have a question here, and I know like we didn't get to the question section, but I think it's worth clarifying or answering. Does Botkube use webhooks and the chat APIs wrappers? I'm imagining that you're like using Slack's API to integrate with it, or Discord's API and stuff like that.
Yeah, so for Slack, there's a Slack app that tightly integrates with Slack and uses WebSockets, so it actually has a constant stream. Really interesting thing about Slack is that we have interactivity. So you can build commands using drop-down boxes, and it's constantly querying the Kubernetes API and getting the resources and giving you like lists of resources and stuff. So if we dig into that, it's a really neat thing because it's like the WebSocket keeps that connection always open. With Discord, Mattermost, and Teams, we are also using the same kind of app integration. And it's not as tightly coupled yet, but we're working on improving that stuff as well.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. And my question is also like, what inspired all of y'all to get involved in this project or to create it if you were the ones that like were initially creating it? I'm always curious about like what drew people to stuff. And I'm not much of a Kubernetes person. Like I've been learning it more and more from like different Cube Shop guests that have come on. But Kubernetes is not my forte.
So maybe I'll briefly go into the origin story of Botkube, and then I'll let maybe Mateusz go next because he joined the project earlier than I did. Yeah. But the origin of Botkube is it was built as an open source project by a large consultancy that specializes in Kubernetes, and they wanted to build tooling for their own customers. And they have a very big customer base in the area that they're located, and they just wanted to build this ChatOps tool to make it easier for their customers to interact with Kubernetes, because the problem was like, how do we get alerts and how do we run these commands? And they built this tool, and because their business was focused on helping their customers implement Kubernetes, they weren't doing a lot with Botkube. And so we had the opportunity to actually take Botkube out and make it its own thing. And so we took Botkube and brought in a team of engineers and me and a designer and a developer advocate, and actually built a full product team around it. And so we saw that opportunity where this was a really neat tool. A lot of people were using it, but it wasn't getting a lot of love and a lot of attention. And we decided to take that on.
Awesome origin story. What about y'all? Like, what made y'all say, yes, I would love to, work on this project and passionate about something like this?
So in general, like Blair mentioned, this project started really simple. So at the beginning, it was only about sending notification to Slack and allowing you to, that was unique, right? Allowing you to communicate with your cluster through the Slack. So running a real commands through it. And there was also an idea to actually maybe utilize this and to integrate more tools across because CNCF is packed with a lot of great projects, right? It's maybe hard to discover them, maybe sometimes hard to actually connect them together. So Botkube actually, through almost this year, become a platform that actually allows you to connect these tools together. To actually, from a single, you have like a single place where you can talk to your cluster from using different tools instead of switching your context, going through the UIs, through the installation of the different CLIs in your terminal, having also an issue sometimes with actually getting access and securing that properly, right? So I think that's really nice when it comes to Botkube, that it gives you a single space, a single place where you can actually work with those tools. And yeah, that's really awesome promise when it comes to this project. I see that you are muted, at least on my end.
I said, what about you, Maria? Any thoughts there? My bad, y'all.
Sure. One thing I really love about Botkube is just the way that it allows basically anybody to use the power of Kubernetes. Like, I'm not a command line girl. Like, the terminal freaks me out to use, but the fact that I can run commands and like really move forward on my Kubernetes journey just by using Slack or Discord just makes it so accessible. And I love being able to give other people that power and that confidence to really use Kubernetes to its full extent.
That's awesome. I didn't even think of it from that perspective, because I guess, Kubernetes can look scary in like terminal-like interfaces. You just see like random logs coming in and you're like, what is this? But like if it's someone that's maybe entry level to like DevOps, or someone that maybe they're just learning, like that can be like a good accessibility point for them. I love that. All right, so we mentioned before we get into demo, so prepare a little bit, Matthew, to share your screen. But before we get into the demo, we did mention some terms that people might not know, right? Because sometimes we have beginners watching the show, which is I completely welcome, and I want to make sure that they understand things. So 2 questions. What is CNCF? And then are y'all able to explain what a Kubernetes cluster is to someone who's a beginner? So anyone take either question.
Okay, I got that. So CNCF stands for the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. So it's basically this vendor neutral large organization that allows the project to go from incubator stage all the way to graduation. And it's sort of like a guiding ominous hand that, is a non-commercial entity that allows projects to grow. And some of those popular projects are Kubernetes, Helm, Prometheus. So you've probably heard of the CNCF without actually hearing the term. And then my favorite question is explaining it to 5-year-olds. I love working with children, so I love explaining what I do to them. I like to view it as like a theater. So if the Kubernetes cluster is the stage, your pods, your microservices are the actors, and then your scheduler and like all your DevOps team are kind of like the strings that are going behind the scenes. And then your audience is like the end users, because they don't see any of that infrastructure work behind the scenes.
I love that as an example. It's like the behind the scenes work going on in a theater, and then the end users just seeing the show. I like that. I hope that helps anybody in the audience that's like, what is Kubernetes? I don't know what's going on. All right, cool. All right, let's dive into the demo, because we've learned a lot about like what Botkube is, but now I want to see it.
Okay, so let me share my screen. I'll try to show you all those things that also Blair mentioned at the beginning about Botkube. Okay, so you should be able to see my presentation.
Okay.
So before the live stream, I've also installed Botkube already on my cluster and configured Slack channels, because as you notice, the vital part for Botkube is the integration with the communication platforms. So for the demo, I will use Slack. And I prepared 2 channels, backend and frontend. They are almost the same. As you can see, I will not dive into the configuration details too much, but you can see that for the backend, I have Kubernetes tools integrated. And when it comes to sources, those are about those notifications. And I will be watching for events in the backend namespace. And when it comes to the front end, the same tools when it comes to the executor part. However, events should be that I will be watching will be coming from the front-end namespace. So that's all when it comes to the configuration. And let me open the Slack window. So what you can see here is, as I mentioned, 2 channels, and the Botkube is already here. So the first message that we sent to the channel, is the initial one, is the help one. So as you can see, it's already quite verbose, because we want to let you know about the syntax of the Botkube, how to actually use it. You can even right away, using buttons, enable or disable notifications in a given channel, list the executors. So maybe I will just click this one. As you can see, we have 2 executors enabled, which is Helm and kubectl. Those are CLIs that normally you use in your terminal. However, I will show you how you can utilize them directly from the chat window. And another channel is the front-end one. So I will just use the split view directly from Slack app, just to have both channels open at the same time. So the first thing that I want to show you is, let me just open my terminal. So I will just play a DevOps role, right? So in our world, there are people that actually installing some applications. And right now, what I will do is to install some application in my cluster in the backend namespace. So as we mentioned, I should receive events only in this channel, and here no one should be pinged about it. So let's maintain this team isolation. So I'm going to deploy my application, and as you can see, events become, we have already two events. The one is about pod and the second about ingress. Both of them are Kubernetes resources, but nothing here when it comes to the front-end channel. So I will just close this chat to make this more readable. And the first thing that you can see is our recommendations. So we can learn about best practices when it comes to the Kubernetes resources. For example, consider defining labels for your services and pods, and also not use the latest stack because it's error prone. Sometimes you may end up with outdated images. So it's not the best way to deploy your application. Another one are about warnings. They are even more important because we detected that you actually created ingress definition that is incorrect because you refer to a secret that does not exist. So probably you want to adjust that. And it's great because by default, Kubernetes will not give you that information. Actually, it will allow you to create this resource. However, Botkube can tell you that something is wrong. And the most important one is that we got information that our application was not successfully installed. It's not running. It's not up and running. So our user probably cannot use it. And that's important for us to be notified about it. And it's quite normal. Like other applications, other projects also send notifications to Slack, as mentioned. But the unique part is what we have is the option to run some actions. So those notifications are actionable. Okay. Using this dropdown, I can select a command. So imagine that you are not a Kubernetes expert. You do not know how to actually construct a kubectl command, or even what it is, a kubectl command, a CLI. However, you know that your application is failing, and you just want to know more about the reasons. So you just want to get logs, some information from the pod. So this way, we actually construct a kubectl command just for you in the context of this event. And the great part is that we also, for long messages, we have an option to filter them directly in the communication window. So I can just type error because we are looking for some errors. And as you can see, I get only a single line. And I see there's already something wrong.
Sorry to interrupt you. First of all, this is awesome. I love I loved how it showed like the recommendations and warnings. And I know sometimes your terminal, it can look scary when it's just like a whole bunch of stuff in red. We did have a couple of comments of people saying they can't see the awesome work that you've created. Is it possible to zoom in just a little bit? I know like on Slack it's a little bit hard.
That's the limitation that right now I'm struggling because I tried to
Command plus.
Yeah, I tried, and it's already in the maximum
okay
options. So
what it is.
Like,
sorry, y'all.
Sorry for that. Maybe I will be able to. Let me just double check whether there is actually one thing that I can do. If I would change my screens.
Okay. Sorry
then
about
probably
that.
the resolution will be different. So maybe that will help you guys. So let me rearrange this, and now we'll be on this.
Although somebody said they're on an iPhone mini and it looked great to them, but there was just a couple of people that said like.
Okay, so let's make others also happy because that's the purpose of this live stream. So once again, I will just share my screen with a different window, and hopefully it will be a little bigger for you guys.
I think that's bigger.
Cool, good to know that.
Cool.
So let's so the first thing that I did was to filter out the message, right? So it's already cool because once again, I don't need to do some context switching, right? Copy pasting that into, I don't know, other terminal that allows me to grab through the output. I can actually right away type what I want to filter, some keywords. So right now I know that there is some connection issues, and mostly let's say, without this, you will need to go to a terminal. You will need to connect to your Kubernetes cluster. So you need to figure out actually how to get some credentials, right? Because it's not something that you can run right away. With a communication platform, what you can actually do is to type botkube and run some kubectl commands here. So I will just type kubectl get pod. So that will actually be executed on my cluster. So as you can see, it was executed. Sometimes also typing a long command, it's problematic when it comes to communication windows. We don't have auto-completion. For that reason, we also introduced aliases. So if you type Botkube list aliases, you will see those which are enabled specifically on a given channel. So I have only one for the demo purpose, KGP, which actually stands for the same, kubectl get pods. It's like, as you can see, it was resolved, and the same was returned. However, once again, there may be some users that are not so familiar with the kubectl syntax yet. So we provide quite unique solution, which is about allowing you to build your command using our wizard. So if you will type kc kubectl whatever, but important is without the rest of the command, we'll ask you about and send you drop down and ask you about which command you want to run. So you already have some list of available commands. You don't need to guess them. So for example, I want to get some resources, and there is a list of the resources that I can get from the cluster. And in my case, because there was a connection issue, I would like to check some services, whether they are defined or not. So we have also namespaces. The namespaces in Kubernetes are a great thing because they allow you to actually isolate sometimes some teams and your applications so they don't see each other with a proper, if you have a proper configuration in place. So I will select backend one and just run the command. As you can see, without typing, I was even not touching my keyboard. Just by selecting some dropdowns and running the command, I'm able to once again run it. And the beauty of this command builder is also that it's smart enough also to tell you about the resources. So if I change a command to a logs, then the list of the resources is narrowed down only to those which make sense to that command, right? I see you're okay, muted there. Not sure.
Oh no,
you...
I mute myself because I often just keep saying yeah, and then I don't.
Gotcha. And the last part, which I really also enjoy, is that if you select, for example, once again the backend namespace, then actually you have a drop down which is populated with the resource names. And it's also quite common in the Kubernetes ecosystem that the names can become quite long, right? So as you can see, random numbers, everything that is not so human friendly. So better not to type it because definitely you end up with some typo. So better is to just take it from this drop down and simply run the command. Of course, there is a command here, rendered command that will be executed. So you can once again validate it, whether you want to run it. But once you click it, then we end up with the same logs that we saw at the beginning. And the real power of this tool, I think, is when you use it on your mobile devices, right? Because right now I'm sharing my screen with the so here it is with my local computer. However, I also recorded a demo for you to show you how it works with mobile devices. So that's my mobile application. So if I'm, I don't know, somewhere where I don't have access to my computer, actually I can just use my phone, and then the same thing, I just type Botkube, I go with K, just one letter, and then through the drop downs, I'm just selecting what I want to do. So in this case, once again, just type what you want to, for example, get pods, and once again, select some namespace, run the command, and without almost typing, I can just stop. And the phones are great with tapping, right? That's where they are powerful. And with that solution, actually, you get your Kubernetes client right in your pocket, right? You don't have any issues with connecting them. Once again, I will just, because I switch my monitors, I need to also switch the rest of my windows. So here's the presentation. So because what I want to also share with you is actually from the user perspective, that's how it works, right?
Can I just mention one thing?
Yeah, go.
I just want to mention this, that interactive command builder is really, really powerful for people who are developers and who are not DevOps people. So if you're somebody who's like a Java developer who was developing on JVM before and has moved Java apps to something like Spring Boot, and you're running Spring Boot applications in Kubernetes, which is a really common thing, especially, I mean, I worked at Red Hat, we did a lot of that. Yeah. And you were a Java developer, you don't know Kubernetes, you're not a DevOps person, you're focused on your application and getting your applications up and running. And now they're running in these pods in Kubernetes, and they're kind of isolated away. You can't just log into a regular terminal and look at the logs from the JVM or anything like that. They're hidden away in these pod logs. So this gives a developer who may not have any Kubernetes knowledge the ability to actually go and get their logs and see what their Java exceptions and see what kind of things are going wrong with their applications from somewhere like this without having to have credentials to go right into Kubernetes, or to have to go and bother a DevOps person and say, hey, my application's broken. Can you send me these logs? Yeah. So it's like a real self-service, developer self-service platform as well when you put this stuff into it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I looked at it. I'm like, this is awesome. If I had this at past jobs, I wouldn't have to be like, hey, SRE team or hey, DevOps team, I need help with figuring this out. And I like that you had it like, I didn't even think about the fact that, yes, you can do this from your phone because Slack's on your phone. So if you went to lunch really quickly and they're like, oh, like a service is down, you can just quickly like pull it up and be like, let me figure out why. And like you said, if you're not familiar with the Kubernetes commands, you can just like get suggestions of like, okay, you know that you want to get a resource, but you don't know like how to type it in. Like you just click that. But I didn't mean to make you not share. I'm excited to see the presentation.
The other piece I'll mention is that there is some role-based access control too. So if you do have developers, you have DevOps people who need to have like full super user permissions and make changes to things, you can give them those permissions. If you have developers who are only responsible for certain applications in their namespace, you only want them to be able to get logs and nothing else, you can set up a role in Kubernetes and map their Slack channel or their whatever channel to that Kubernetes user or group, and it will inherit those permissions. So you can actually control who can do what, based on what channel they're in.
That's awesome.
Exactly. So that's definitely a power and of Botkube, because it's also a recent change. So once again, I think that I configured already my monitors because I had to switch to all those Windows, the proper one. So getting back to the presentation itself, because sometimes people are asking, okay, so it's awesome, right? What we did. Also, Blair already shared some details how it actually works. So just in a nutshell, the architecture behind it, because sometimes people are focused, okay, how this connection is done. Why Botkube actually has this access. So what you need to do at the beginning is, also there was a question at the beginning of this live stream. Definitely the first thing is to create a bot user. So you saw that I was typing add Botkube. So that's the thing that you need to create. We have an instruction how to do it. Once you have it, then you have the credentials for Slack. Then you need to deploy Botkube inside the cluster. I actually did it, and that's the one-time operation. You just provide those credentials, deploy Botkube inside your cluster. Then Botkube by default is installed in the Botkube namespace, and actually from here we can access different namespaces. So if there will be team A, team B, etc., then we can actually interact with them properly. And the beauty of it is that we, as also Blair mentioned, we use the WebSocket connection. So we are actually initialize the connection from the cluster to the communication platform. So it means that you do not need to expose some external endpoints. You don't need to change your firewall rules, right? So it's also great because otherwise you will need to do some tricks and your cluster will be exposed. And that's something that we don't want to. And the last part was also that I use the CLI. So which is not so normal, right? To use CLI inside Slack and communication platforms. And how we achieve that, basically, we allow you to have your plugin repository. And the plugin repository is a place where you store your plugin binaries together with the index files. And it can be any static file server, like S3, or actually we are using GitHub releases. So thanks to that, when Botkube starts, it downloads only those plugins which are enabled. So we do not download everything. We just download those which are important. And okay. And the last part is that if you actually send this command, we can interpret that. We know that you are actually interested with some Helm commands, and we actually call a proper plugin directly on our pod and sending back the response here. So we are running that in the same pod. It is really awesome because actually you are already in the cluster. You are not like from the local computer targeting a cluster. No, we are doing that already in the cluster. So that's also great because you have the context of a given cluster. And that's all those things that I did. It was manual, right? So problematic part because on you want to automate your daily works. And Blair also mentioned that sometimes you also want to, of course, get information that some application failed, but do I need to really click this logs button? Maybe I just want to have it already. So for this live stream, I prepared 2 demos. And for that, I will just switch to the front-end channel. And what I will do right now, I will simulate that once again, I play a DevOps role. So I'm going to install a database for front-end team. So right now I'm actually deploying a Helm chart. For those who also are familiar with the Kubernetes, I will install Postgres database. And as you can see, we got information that a given Helm chart was installed. However, the one thing that is unique is that there is a new message that was executed by our automation, display Helm release notes. And we executed this dynamic command because we noticed that Helm release was created. And you as a front-end team, you already know about, okay, how to connect DNS of this Postgres instance. And also, once again, no context switching directly from my communication platform and get password for that instance. And yet another, I will also get back to the security aspect of it later. But one more automation I want to show you is related to the GitHub itself. So imagine that at the beginning, we also show you that you have an issue with your application. So here was the error, and we had to get logs. That's also awesome because we can start already cooperating on the channel to figure out, okay, why it's actually not working. But sometimes you don't want to try to figure out it right away. So what I will do, I will once again deploy my failing application, but right now to the front-end channel, and my automation should create a GitHub issue for a given error. So the error is here, and now another automation that we have with the GitHub plugin was actually triggered for this pod. And as you can see here, here's the URL of the GitHub issue that was created. Okay, maybe it's not so successfully, the issue was created successfully, but it's about the error. So if we will navigate to the and I will just open it here. Here's my browser. And as you can see, in the GitHub, we have an issue that was created a few seconds ago. It's already labeled properly. But what is more important is that we already have the context of this issue. So logs, information about the cluster, the version. So you can already assign it to your project and prioritize that, whether it's something that you want to already start working on, or maybe you'll push it into next release. So that was the really simplest integration. But with our framework, what you can do is actually take it to the next level and add buttons. So for example, we have a button whether you really want to create an issue. Maybe you want to add a comment under existing issue. So it could be let's say when it comes to the user experience, could be there could be more features. That's a basic one that basically show you how it can work. Also imagine solution that it will run inside your cluster, and if you have it can detect flaky tests. So all of us are familiar with it. Like your tests may fail sometimes, and sometimes you just ignore them because you don't remember that even they failed. And if that will automatically create issues and bump it each time it occurs, then you know, okay, it's something that is happening 1 per day. It's something that we need to take care of. But if it's something like 1 per 3 months, I know that most of us will ignore it. Like that's our word. And let me just get back to this. So the final thing I mentioned about the security aspect, and Blair also mentioned this one. So we put quite a lot of efforts to make sure that we are not like that. Like with the 1.0 release, we actually invested our time to be really integrated with the Kubernetes RBAC system. They have already a nice RBAC system that you can utilize to block your users properly. And actually, just to recall what we have in our setup, it was like I was using my Slack workspace. I have 4 plugins enabled. All of them were plugins, but 2 of them were source plugins, which are sending notifications, and 2 of them were executors, so I can just call them. And the unique part is like both of them, like Helm was actually enabled on front-end and back-end channels. Same with the kubectl. So what about a security aspect? So let me just show you whether on the front-end channel, I can ask about secrets, which I shouldn't, about kubectl get secret. not from my namespace, but from the backend. When I will run it, then because we are using the Kubernetes RBAC, we will get information straight from the API server that, sorry, for you it's forbidden, right? I cannot do it. But if I will switch to the backend channel, type the same command, then it should allow me to see all of them. So we are protecting you. So each channel, if you invite someone to this channel, of course, they can see it. However, you can isolate them on this level. So, and it's really simple, because if you see how it's done, that's the configuration. That's it. What do you need to do? For the kubectl, even though it's bind to the different channels, you can say that, hey, when it comes to the RBAC, the channel name decides about the group that will be used under the hood. And it could be, of course, different one, like a user email. So if you will have some permissions assigned to you as with a given email address, then you will be allowed or not to run a given command. And that's all when it comes to those most important features of our project, because there are much more. However, I will not have time to go through all of them for sure. So that's all when it comes to my demo part.
That was awesome. And of course, as a GitHub employee, my favorite was the auto populating a GitHub issue. I thought that was pretty cool that that could happen. I love the integrations that y'all created. I want to just check to see like any comments or thoughts from other people. It looks like a lot of people are excited by this. They're saying like this is like wonderful, and they think it's like y'all put in a lot of work to this, and they were like saying thank you. There are, or like someone said this is a great idea as well. And then also, just before I get into the hard questions, just saying hi to a couple folks. I know Nakima came in to support probably me and Maria, and then of course Kelly came in to support y'all. So there's one question here from Patrick that said, is this tool compatible with cloud-hosted Kubernetes clusters such as EKS, AKS, and GKE?
Yeah, so actually you can install that on different providers, including even those the local ones. So even if you want to, that's the best even solution to try Botkube, just to use K3D, which is a local cluster, or Minikube kind, whatever you will select. We are quite agnostic, I would say. The only thing that you need to be aware is the Kubernetes version. So officially, we focus on the 3 latest Kubernetes versions. So we follow the same policy as Kubernetes itself. So we just want to be compliant with the same policy, because if we will support, for example, older versions, then we can end up with some security issues, etc. So that's the reason why we also bump our libraries together with the Kubernetes. But the rest will work.
That's fair. And you kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier on, and that makes sense, you know, because maybe one reason why they made a patch is because there was a security error. Someone asked, can this be used across many chat channels? For example, to be able to set up a channel for a support case. I think that you did show that. Yeah.
Exactly. So not only using across different channels, but like we support that, but also the most important thing is that we have dedicated permissions per channel, right? Yeah. So the support team may have more access, maybe to react to some errors, and for example, be able to restart a given pod. But in the normal scenario, for example, we have a read-only permissions, which also protects you from running some dangerous command on production or other systems. Like sometimes it's better to have this read-only access. And the same thing can be actually, we also support running Botkube across different communication platforms. So at the same time, Botkube can communicate with Slack and Discord if you want to. That's also supported.
Okay, that's awesome. I didn't realize you could. I can't think of the use case for like maybe someone wants to use Slack and Discord at the same time, but that's awesome that you can also do that.
There's a particular use case for I was going to say
I've worked at large enterprises where we have had multiple, like 3 different chat platforms, because we started with one and then we acquired a company and they're still using something else, and we acquired somebody else and using something else, and everybody's on something different. And this would actually would tie all those things together. I've actually been in that situation myself.
Interesting. Okay, I guess it's because I'm not in the Kubernetes world, so I don't know. Cool. And then There is a person, okay, one person asked if this can be used for multi-clusters. I don't have context on what that even is. So
So maybe Blair, you will answer that because it's also related a little to the product and to the features that may or may not be.
Yeah, it can be used for multi-clusters. There are some limitations and caveats when using multi-clusters that are in the documentation. We are working on extending that multi-cluster support and making it much, much more powerful. There's a couple of limitations with Slack, for example, where if you're running commands from Slack, you need to have a Slack bot set up for each cluster right now. But with receiving alerts, there's no problem. You can receive alerts from as many clusters you want, and it works no problem. We are going to fix that. We're going to change the Slack app and make it so that you have full multi-cluster support. And you can just tell it where you want the commands to route it. That's coming actually really soon, probably in the next month or two.
Okay, so that was the thing, but I didn't know whether we can already share that, but
yeah,
yes, so
it's definitely going to be coming.
I'm also really excited about that because it will simplify you really a lot of things. And the multi-cluster for you, or if you just want to know, is like if you have two different Kubernetes clusters deployed on two, for example, different data centers or whatever, then you can once again have a single place where you can connect to them and to talk to them. And that's great because we are already aware of people that were actually with a single command were targeting multiple clusters just to check the state of it. So it's also saving your typing you multiple times. Okay, and this server and this server and this. What about this? And that's also the beauty of it.
There are a few security questions in the chat that I want to address from kind of right from the product side, because we have a security philosophy that I want to talk about. And so when we look at this, if you install Botkube out of the box with nothing and you don't configure it, you just tell it, I want alerts and a Slack channel, you don't get any ability to run any commands. The running commands is disabled by default. You have to actively enable that in your configuration. It won't let you do it. When you do actively enable that, say I want to turn on the Helm plugin or the kubectl plugin, by default out of the box, you can only run read-only commands. You cannot run any kind of destructive commands to create things, delete things, anything like that. So if you want to then make that next step and allow that stuff, you need to set up a role that has that permissions and map to a role that allows that. And you need to change the Botkube configuration to tell it what verbs they're allowed to run and say, okay, you're allowed to run create, delete, edit, things like that. So you really have to focus on making it dangerous. By default, out of the box, it's very, very safe. And even at that point, the question is, can it be, this question here, can it be restricted by user? It can't be restricted by the individual Slack user yet. We have not got to that point. I'm not sure if there's a demand for that. Obviously, we'll look into that because there are ways to do that through OAuth. But right now, it's mapping a channel to Kubernetes group or user and giving it the permissions. So the channel has the permissions. But the way that you resolve that issue is you create private channels and make sure that the admins of the private channels are trusted and only invite people to the private channels that should have access to run those destructive commands. And that's the piece right now. And there's a possibility to extend that right down to mapping a Slack user. Like if I'm logged into Slack, that maps me to my Kubernetes user as well. And we could implement that at some point if there is a demand for that level of security.
Awesome. I'm glad you addressed that, because I did star those as questions I was going to ask. But yeah, I hope that helped Emo Girl Lover to explain like how they're handling security. It does sound like you said out the box, it's completely limited. It's very limited. So you would have to give people more permissions to be able to do those, like delete all the pods or something like that. I think it's a valid concern though. It's a valid concern. And then they asked about Mattermost support. I believe y'all do have Mattermost support.
Yeah, so the supported platforms are Slack, Mattermost, Discord, and Microsoft Teams right now. And there's a possibility to extend those if we have demand to extend those. It's depends on the platform, depends how hard it is to write an app for them. We've had people ask about Google platform, Google Talk, Chat, whatever it is right now, and some of those other tools. And it's possible to extend it. It just uses the app platform for whatever the chat platform is to just map that stuff back and forth into Botkube. There's an API for it.
That's cool. Awesome. I mean, there's a couple questions here that I'm like, let's see if they're questions we can answer. Someone asks if there's limitations or drawbacks to using ChatOps for Kubernetes. I see mostly positives of it just being more accessible for folks that aren't familiar with Kubernetes, but I can't give any.
There are a couple, because from a chat platform, you can't do interactive things. So if I want to do something like kubectl edit and actually edit a config live, I can't do that because I don't have any kind of editor or anything inside the chat platform. So basically, I can send it commands and receive stuff back, but I can't do any kind of interactive work. It's probably the biggest limitation, I think.
Okay, that's super fair for people to be aware of. And then someone asked this question, but this is more for me. They're asking about like GitHub Codespaces. Feel free to like hit me up on the side. Basically, GitHub Codespaces is just like an editor in your browser. And you can like set up like Kubernetes and Docker stuff in there, but like hit me up. I think it's a little bit off topic, and I want to keep on topic. All right, with the 15 minutes we have left, first of all, I think this is an amazing project. Like, really excited by all the stuff that y'all have put into it, and like I think it really made it accessible for someone like me who knows how to code, who's done software engineering, now is a developer advocate, but I don't know anything about Kubernetes. I try to avoid it with all cost. Like if things are running, I'm like, that's fine, and I'll let somebody else handle it. But this made it like make way more sense on if like I needed a resource up or I needed to read the logs. Like I can easily just do that, and it'll generate the logs for me and the command for me. And I really like the direction that software engineering is going in now. It's like we have all these platforms that make things easier, but they're still hard to use. And now we're like at the stage of like, here's how to make it easier for anybody to be able to use it. Cool. My next couple questions to y'all are going to be a little less technical, since we went through the demo and it was awesome, and we have about like 12 more minutes left. I know Marie got to go on a flight. My other questions to y'all are like, let's see which ones would be great. Do you have any advice for folks that are going into maintaining their own project or getting involved in an open source project, just from your perspective? And somebody said, Maria's been real quiet. They want to hear from you. So that's only because you were, Matthew was doing the demo. So yeah, any thoughts from you and anyone else?
Hi all, I'm here. But I guess for me, about contributing and just being a maintainer for projects, I think is like, don't be scared. Like I have to tell myself in the mirror, like, it's okay. Like even the smallest thing is a contribution. So for example, like if you want to get involved with Botkube, like go through the installation process and tell us about it. That's a contribution. And then like slowly work your way up. And like, let's say there's like an API that you work with a lot, then you can work through making a plugin for it. Doesn't have to be perfect, but like putting together a POC, that's a contribution. So kind of like easing yourself into it and like not feeling like you need to be like, you know, Mateusz level master maintainer and have to have like years and years of DevOps experience to be in types of projects. So that's my perspective.
Love that. I think that's a really good point, to go slowly into it. You don't have to jump straight into it. Anybody else have thoughts? If not, okay. Oh no, it looked like you're gonna say something.
No, it was really on point. So when it comes to the contribution, like from the external people, at least that was the problem for me. I was always thinking like the contribution is always related to the code, right? It's always like I need to jump into the code base, I need to fix some bugs, and then I will be, I will somehow help this project, right? It was like misunderstanding of this kind of contribution purpose, because the most important for the project to live is the users and the feedback, this loop, and that's probably the best contribution for us, because there are out there a really nice open source projects, and I often use all of them. And even saying like, hi, I'm here, that's almost a contribution, because you already know that, hey, I'm using this product, so I know that this product was created for someone. And I sometimes, if I'm using some GitHub libraries that are hosted there, then I'm always also trying to see whether there is some issue to just be like the contribution comment under the issue. Hi, I'm here, I'm using you, and that's also cool.
Awesome. I love that. And I also want to point people to the website as well if they're interested in trying it out and installing one of the apps to their chat platforms. The website is botkube.io, and then if you are interested in making a contribution and joining in, maybe even just making an issue, something small, like Maria said, go ahead to github.com/cubeshop/botkube to get involved. Okay, we have, wow, time went really fast. Maybe I'll switch into some of the non-technical questions, unless there were some that you something that you wanted to highlight. I guess somebody asked, like, what do you all think the future of Kubernetes is, which is, I think, a interesting question. Any thoughts here? How do
That's
you see it evolving?
there's kind of something I want to say that's related to this, and I want to talk about the open source project thing from kind of the leadership side rather than from the contributor side. And from us, because I worked on Prometheus, which is a huge project, has its own steering group and everything in CNCF. And I've worked on tiny projects like Botkube, which has a small team working on it, small team of maintainers and some external maintainers. And the big part is just to communicate as much as possible. And so as long as it makes it much easier if everybody kind of knows what the strategy is and knows what the vision for the project is and kind of knows where you want to go with it. And we're taking all the feedback from people and communicating about that. And I mean, when you have big projects like Prometheus, you have the advantage of having these steering groups and stuff like that for monitoring in Kubernetes, and lots of people will come and join those meetings and you can talk about the future of what it is. For smaller projects, sometimes it's coming just from me and I'm saying, like, look, this is where I think we should go. What does everybody think about this? We always share security changes and like proposals with the community and say, hey, what do you think of this? Does it look okay? It's just communication. So the big thing is just to do as much outbound communication to your maintainers and your contributors and to your community as you can. And if everybody knows what's going on, it makes it a lot easier for them to contribute. It makes it a lot clearer for them to actually use the projects and things like that.
I love that point. And I feel like communication is an underrated skill in all aspects of tech. Like, we've over focused on, like, can you code really well? But it's like, are you able to communicate when you're behind on a deadline? Are you able to communicate the roadmap and all that so that people are up to date on what's going on? I do love that you pointed that out. Okay. With 7 minutes left, I'm just gonna switch into the non-technical questions. I wanted to ask more, but let's just do it. All right. So, from all of you, what's the first programming language you learned? Would love to know.
Does Logo count as a programming language?
I don't even know.
Logo, where you drive see, I'm much older. Logo was a thing where you have a little turtle and it would draw shapes and you would tell the turtle where to go. It wasn't really a programming language, it was a scripting language kind of. You would drive the little thing on the screen and it would make shapes and you would say, go straight for so far and then turn right 45 degrees. And anyway, so that was the first one when I was like, this was in the early 80s. And then the next one was BASIC after that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it counts.
My first language was Scratch, which is kind of similar. It's like an MIT open source project where basically there's like a cat and you don't even have to type. Like, you just have to like drag and drop different features, but it's really cool. I remember I made like a Flappy Bird game. And I think my first official language was Python. Very basic.
Nice. Just Blair, if it's any consolation, someone also used Logo. I've never used Scratch, but like, I've seen people use it and I do think it looks like a good resource. What about you, Matthew?
So actually, for me, it was also because if it counts Logo, but it was in school actually. So that was a standard for us. Then actually, thanks to my brother, I was writing my first program on Commodore 64. So also using BASIC. So there was a calculator. It was even a book. So it was more like even though there was not copy pasting, was like reading and typing that directly. But that was the first experience. And then like the real program that I did, it was with the C, I think with C. And because the oldest, let's say, kinda that I touched was also Pascal, but it was during the on the university we're using that because they wanted also to show us that, hey, Java is nice, but get in touch with this first.
So they gave you a little background.
Exactly.
Nice. I love that. Yeah, I feel like, okay, for me, I was trying to learn to code. I didn't even know what programming languages were, so I learned SQL. I don't even know if that counts as a real programming language, more like a query language. And then in school, I learned like Visual Basic. Um, Other question for y'all: if money wasn't an issue, how would you ideally spend your time, whether it's job wise or not job wise?
I mean, I would not work. I would retire instantly, and I would make music and mountain bike and be outside.
I'm here for that. Yeah.
I think I would go back to teaching. So before the developer advocate, I did a lot of STEM education for that K through 12, kindergarten through senior year. And I don't know, I love working with developers, but there's something so inspiring of seeing like a little kid, you know, make their own app or just like feel encouraged to, you know, set their future. It's basically setting their future up for something new. I don't know. Kind of miss that.
Yeah. I love that. You have a lot of patience though. I'm like, in theory it sounds nice, but if I were to do it, I would get frustrated. What about you, Matthew?
Oh, you're on mute.
So it comes to me, actually, I enjoy what I'm doing right now. So that's my hobby. However, if I will have enough money to just do whatever I want, I think that I will just still do what I do, but only for 50% of my time. And then I will just try to different jobs, right? Because there's even a channel on YouTube that guys is trying to do other jobs. And you know how it is. If you want to start some job, then at the beginning you will not get paid well because you just need to learn it. And I will just maybe not go to the level that I'm actually a useful worker, but at the end, you know, have this versatile experience across different jobs that are out there, because there's a lot of like also with trains, with this working with wood, everything. So it's really nice. But you know, you don't have enough time to actually spend. It will need to be your job to try other job. That's
Yeah.
only a solution. Or have enough money.
That sounds really fun, actually. Just to be like, what's a day in your life like? I like that. Okay. Last couple of questions. What's your dream open source project besides this one? Maybe this one's your ultimate dream. But if you were like, if I said, you had the time, you had the money, and you can make this dream open source project that you've been thinking of in your head. Don't all go at once.
Ooh, I have one.
Okay.
So I like recently there was like this lab that tried to make cheesecake from a 3D printer. So maybe like 3D printing the recipes. Because it looked really terrible. It looked like people who never baked before in their life. So like actually making good food with 3D printers.
That's cool. I like that. That's a good idea. Blair or Matthew is like, you're like Botkube's the ultimate open source project for you.
I think for me, I make music with synthesizers and things like that. There's a lot of open source hardware projects for doing like synthesizer design and stuff, and it would be things like that. That would be really neat stuff to work on, designing circuit boards and synthesizer modules and stuff, and having them fully open source so anybody could get them and create them at home, basically.
That sounds fun.
I really feel myself in a space with CLI. So actually, I will be looking for. I was already on the path that I was thinking about. Okay, on the GitHub, there's already a nice projects that get a lot of tractions, where allows you to simplify working with CLIs, creating your own CLIs. So I also wanted to actually focus on that, but maybe sometime I will have some spare time to invest and create such products.
I like that.
Because imagine also kubectl. You need to learn kubectl, right? It's really hard sometimes. You don't know the syntax, so imagine that you just also somehow talk with kubectl itself. So you just type kubectl help, and in the help you just type how to delete pod, and then actually that's the thing that is already there. They kubectl guys already provided you help message for each command, right? But you need to know the command to ask for the help of it. So that's crazy, right? You need to know how to type the command, then you will type --help, and then you have more information. But actually, how to find this command, how to know that this is actually kubectl delete pod then --help. So that will be awesome to just find those examples in an easy way. Maybe sometime I'll have time to actually, because it's already doable. I didn't find a project for that, but maybe someone will be inspired and do it. Then I will definitely give a star.
I like that. I'm actually passionate about that too, because I feel like the command line. Oh, and we hit 2 o'clock, so I'll wrap up quickly. Sorry. But the command line hasn't evolved for years, right? And like now we're starting to get a couple of new things like Fig.io, and then even the GitHub Copilot CLI, where you're like, how do I, like, you can do question mark, how do I like grep a file or something like that. The Copilot CLI will do that for you. So that would be awesome to have that with kubectl, and I don't think that's hard. Okay, last 2 questions since I'm going over is how do you pronounce GIF? Is it, I mean, I said how I pronounce it, my bad. But how do you pronounce it? GIF or GIF? And then what's your favorite Beyonce song? And then we'll wrap up for real.
It's GIF. It's canonically a soft G.
Yes.
The inventor of it said it's a soft G. So, and that's how I've always said it. So I'm always right.
All right. How about y'all? You agree, disagree?
I started with GIF, but then like here, right? All of those people were saying GIF, and then I googled that, and I'm wrong, and then I switched to GIF. But my initial phase was GIF, but now I'm trying to use GIF.
It's all good. Does it? A lot of people come on here and they say it's GIF. What about you, Maria?
It's GIF. Always been, always will be.
Okay, nice. Finally, a group of people that agree with me. Favorite Beyonce song, and then we'll head out.
Today it is Energy and Move because I'm traveling from Renaissance.
Yeah. Awesome. Anybody else?
I don't have one. I'm going to admit my ignorance of many things, many types of popular culture, movies, music.
I thought you were
and so on.
You said you
it's just, if you want to talk about weird, obscure electronic music, we could talk about that.
Gotcha.
Please fix that before I see you in person in Amsterdam.
What about you, Matthew?
Actually, also I have nothing that comes to my mind. I'm more into Silesian music, so this regional. I will need to double check after the live stream. I will double check which is my favorite one.
Okay, cool. Double check if y'all ever want to come back on Open Source Friday, because I'm asking again. All right. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you to the audience for being really interactive and engaging and asking great questions. Also really excited about Botkube. This seems like an amazing product. So go ahead and give it a star. Check it out. It's github.com/cubeshop/Botkube. I don't want to keep people any longer because I know that Maria is traveling and in the airport right now. So thank you so much, y'all, and have a great Friday. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.